I'm beyond thrilled to finally announce the secret I've been keeping for months now. I'm pregnant. If you're a subscriber, you may have noticed some bodily changes and mood changes I've had this year. It's been really hard pretending like I'm not pregnant. In the past few months, my boobs have grown a lot, my waistline is bigger, and my headspace has been like a roller coaster of emotions. So I'm finally glad I get to share this surprise with you. And telling my family was one of the most special moments of my life. Okay, I'm trying to stay calm, but we're about to drop the news to our family that we're pregnant. And this is obviously the first baby. This is also the first grandbaby and the first great grandbaby. So this baby has been wanted for a long time. So I'm so excited to see how they react.
Oh my god. That's crazy. That's crazy.
You gotta get that vehicle.
What's your side, bro?
Grandpa.
How far along are you?
7 weeks.
Hey, congratulations.
Sometimes
While I'm overjoyed about finally getting pregnant, it wasn't an easy or straightforward path, and that's really what I want to share with you today. It took me 2 whole years, and I didn't go down the traditional medical route. I chose a path of total body healing, and even though it took 2 years, I am so happy that I chose that path. To explain my experience, I've sorted this video in 2 chapters. The first one is what I expected to happen, and spoiler alert, it did not go that way. The second chapter is learning I had fertility problems. The third chapter is how we fix those problems. And the final chapter is how I found out I was pregnant. This is my 2-year journey to getting pregnant. I thought I would just get pregnant whenever the heck I wanted to. And every woman that I've talked to who has had babies or tried to have babies has said the exact same thing. Like, it seems so simple. But I didn't want to have babies young in a marriage, so I got back on birth control when we got married 8 years ago. Now, for further backstory, because this journey didn't just start then, I was on birth control pills for 12 years and I had an IUD for 3 years. I can honestly say that one of the biggest regrets of my life is getting on birth control. At 16 years old, I had like 3 pimples. My doctor said, we can fix that with a birth control pill. Now, at the time, I was a huge tomboy, not the least bit sexually active at all. And I thought that this was just my solution that I had to go with if I didn't want to have pimples through high school. The problem with drugs is there's no discussion of how long you should or shouldn't be on it. There's no follow-up to see how it's affecting your physical health and your mental health, and I've had so many friends that have had horror stories in this regard. Hormonal birth control does radical things to your body, and they don't tell you all that stuff. I don't know if they just don't know or if they think it's a negligible detail, which it most certainly is not, but all they told me was that it would fix my pimple problem. It did, but so would a facial care routine. Back then, we didn't have YouTube to search for good facial care habits, and so I just got on the pill and didn't think twice about it. Between the pills and IUD, I was on birth control for 15 years. That's 15 years of telling my very young body that you don't have to make these hormones because I'm going to supplement them for you. The fact is that these hormonal contraceptives change you. They change the way that you view yourself. They change your emotional regulation. They change whom you're attracted to, which is a life-altering decision. And they change your periods, which is the natural process designed by the Creator to help you procreate. But none of that was explained to me, and maybe the doctors didn't know. We all know the healthcare system is broken, but that's a discussion for probably a different video. The point is that when I tried to get pregnant at 32 years old, I found out that the real problem wasn't just infertility. The problem was that my hormones were all out of whack and I wasn't healthy enough for pregnancy. The good news about identifying the real problem is that you can take ownership over the solution. I now believe very strongly that I'm the only person that can choose healthy habits for me, and I believe the same is true for you. I won't lie and say that this has been an easy journey. Living counterculturally is not easy. It takes a ton of research, it takes some extra money, and really it takes very strong mental resolve to not just do what everybody else is doing. But I don't think anything else could possibly be more important, especially when you're 32 years old facing an infertility crisis. Once I got off birth control, my body went nuts. I was 32 years old and I was close to being premenopausal. What the hell? They don't tell you the harrowing truth of the long-term side effects of drugs, but if you take them long enough, you'll find out. The big problem is that it changes your hormones and your ability to create your own hormones. The other problem, which I don't think is talked about enough, is that when you're young, you think you have all the time in the world to do whatever you want to do. You can become whatever you want to be. Well, you can't be a 50-year-old pregnant woman. That is an extremely rare thing. In fact, the window for fertility is much shorter than we think it is. Now look, I'm a generally positive person, but we have to ground positivity in truth. As women, we have limited fertility windows and birth control really fudges with that. So when I was 16 years old and a tomboy and planning to become a Protestant nun or something, I didn't think twice about what are the effects of birth control on my abilities to have babies later on. I had no idea that my 32-year-old self trying to get pregnant would feel that opportunity to have babies almost ripped out of her hands. And this infertility crisis is affecting tons of women, especially millennials who are aging away from that prime fertility window. So I didn't know this until the last couple of years, but women are having their periods younger and younger. Starting now around 12 years old is the average age. So that's when fertility begins, and I think we all know that we're born with all the eggs that we'll ever have. You can't grow more. But did you know that your best eggs drop first? So the eggs that drop when you're 40 are not nearly as good as the eggs that drop when you're 20, which is why even though the average age for the last menstrual cycle is now 51 years old, you can ask any woman who's trying to get pregnant in their 40s, it is very difficult. So really, your best fertility window is in your 20s, your second best is in your 30s. So there's not just the physical health considerations, there's of course the, are you in the right relationship? Are you financially stable? There's a lot of other considerations. I'm just talking about the fertility window for now. Unfortunately, I did get pregnant before my body was ready, and I've since been told that the longer you're on birth control, the longer it's going to take to heal. I was on birth control for 15 years. It essentially took me 2 years to heal my body. But before that, when I was only 6 months off of birth control, I got pregnant and I was enthused. I mean, I was excited that I got pregnant, but some part of me felt like this isn't quite right. This timing isn't right. It just felt wrong and I couldn't explain why. I just had this inner sense of unrest about it. When I went to the obstetrician for my first prenatal appointment, I had my ultrasound and they told me that the baby didn't have a heartbeat. And without any sensitivity whatsoever, the doctor said, you need to take a pill to miscarry because the baby isn't viable. And at the time it was kind of during COVID, post-COVID, but my husband wasn't even allowed to be in the room with me. So I was making a decision about our offspring and he wasn't even in the room with, he wasn't there. And she's trying to get me to take this pill. And I said, I am not ready to accept that. What are my other options? So she said I could come back the following week and have an ultrasound to see if the baby's heartbeat was there. Maybe I had mistimed when I got pregnant. After a tortuous week, one of the hardest weeks of our lives for sure, just diligently praying that this heartbeat would appear, we went back in for the appointment and found out the baby isn't viable. There is no heartbeat. It just didn't develop. I didn't know if it was my fault or not. They just said it happens and we shouldn't expect this to happen in the future. But if you had a miscarriage or you walked with someone through miscarriage, this loss of a child that you've dreamt about and imagined a future for, that is not an acceptable answer. So I did what I often do when I'm hurting. I went down a rabbit hole of research and learned so much about miscarriage and pregnancy, and really just armed myself with information to try to pacify this aching hurt that I had, that I wasn't healthy enough to be a mom, that I had hurt my baby somehow, that it was my fault. I don't know, like you just go through all these questions that just rush through your head. It's like your logic cannot control the questions that come up in your head. But in doing research and in talking to other people about it, I found out that it's actually, miscarriage is really quite common. It's not a strange rarity. 1 in 5 pregnancies end in miscarriage, and 1 in 4 women will experience miscarriage. We all know the norm of not announcing you're pregnant until the 2nd trimester, and that comes from the 1st trimester being the most precarious for a miscarriage. 80% of miscarriages occur in the 1st trimester, but it's dramatically reduced week after week. So if you're in your 13th week, it's a much lower chance than if you're in your 2nd week. An estimated 60% of miscarriages are caused by genetic conditions which they can't fix, there's nothing they can do about it. And beyond miscarriage, 1 in 5 couples experiences infertility, which is technically defined as not getting pregnant within a year of trying and not using contraceptives. These are sad statistics for a terribly sad experience. But to me, what hurt just as bad was that the standard for OB care was that you would have to have 3 miscarriages before they tested to see something was wrong with you. And if I had to go through that experience 3 times, I would be so heartbroken and hopeless, I probably wouldn't be trying anymore. However, because of my older age at 33 years old, which is when I technically crossed the threshold of being infertile, it had been a year of trying. That's when they said that we should test my eggs for viability, and that would help them to refer me to a fertility clinic for IUI or IVF. And like every other medical issue I've had over the last decade, the MD's answer really didn't satisfy me. So instead, I asked my functional medicine doctor what we could do to try to figure out what was going wrong. So this is what we did to radically fix what I had radically broken. Before I elaborate on the 4 big problems that we fixed, I first have to tell you that this isn't some kind of magic success formula for pregnancy. Nobody can guarantee that. Instead, I hope that hearing this alternate perspective and alternate path maybe sparks some ideas in you for how you can take more control over your health, whether you're trying to get pregnant or it's just something that has been on your mind. There are so many factors that affect fertility, from mama's health to daddy's health to egg quality, sperm quality, ovulation timing, etc., etc. This is just what worked for me, and I wish somebody would have told me this type of story when I was searching for hope. Also note, this isn't medical advice. Okay, the first problem that we fixed was my hormone imbalance. So I did a full hormone panel, and this differs from what your MD would do for you because the traditional medical hormone panel is 1 day of your 28-ish day cycle, whereas the full hormone panel that I did measured every couple of days in that whole cycle, which allowed me to see the fluctuations of each hormone during that time, and each of your sex hormones needs to follow a certain path in order for a pregnancy to be viable. The hormone panel revealed to us, and when I say us, I mean myself and my functional medicine doctor, that my estrogen and progesterone levels were nearly flatlined and my testosterone level was high. So we needed to rebalance those. Now, if you're like me, you don't actually know what that means. It seems like balance would just be they need to hit the same marker as everybody else's, but actually everybody has a different hormonal balance that is healthy and happy for them. But each of your sex hormones does need to be in balance in proportion to each other at the right timing in order to support ovulation and the continuation of the pregnancy. To raise and balance my hormone levels, my functional medicine doctor prescribed natural herbs which would stimulate my body's own production of estrogen and progesterone. So this is not the same as going the medical route of hormone replacement therapy. To me, that didn't make sense because I had just spent 15 years replacing hormones and telling my body it doesn't need to make them. And I didn't want to continue down that route for the rest of my life. I mean, it's not just pregnancy that you need hormones for. You need it for longevity, for your entire life. So I wanted to reteach my body to create its own hormones. And that is a longer path than hormone replacement therapy. But I think for me, it was the right decision because I want to get pregnant, hopefully have a few babies in the next few years. And I want to have healthy hormone levels until I die at 100 or 101 years old. The second issue that we fixed was my nutrient depletion that was shown in my blood work. So normal blood work, if you had it done at any doctor that you've gone to, your insurance has paid for, that is in the allopathic healthcare model. And that kind of means that all humans should have the same results in their blood work, which is absurd to think is true, but I mean, that's how they measure it. And they measure within 2 standard deviations of normal. If you haven't taken statistics since college, normal would be 0. And 1 standard deviation would be 1 or -1 from 0. And 2 standard deviations would be 2 or -2. So your range of what they consider normal is very wide. And if you look around at the normal American, it's not something to be coveted. The normal American is overweight. They have a 50% chance of cancer, and 88% of Americans are metabolically compromised. So not only do I not want to aim to be normal, I sure as hell don't want to aim to be within 2 standard deviations of normal. Now, I didn't know all of this before going to the functional medicine doctor. Before, I wasn't really listening to my body. I was more fit, more toned, more sexy, but I wasn't healthy. I would work out incessantly and eat Chick-fil-A and energy bars and all kinds of highly processed stuff. I was listening to the common prevailing practices of normal health, which, let's be honest, has produced the unhealthiest developed society that's ever existed in all of human history. Okay, that was a bit of a tangent, but hopefully that helps explain my thinking and why I did all this work. So we use the blood test to kind of guide where I need to add more nutrients into my life, whether that was with food. I started taking a prenatal that had so many good nutrients. It was a food-based, high-quality prenatals. Not all prenatal vitamins are made the same. Some of them have like 50% limestone in them. It'll say calcium, I think, calcium something, but it's limestone. They're not all made the same. Anyway, so I started taking like an expensive prenatal, worth it for sure. The truth is, going down this full health route is expensive. It's all cash pay. But if you're really interested in optimizing your health, your whole living experience, then I think it's very much worth it. If you're a subscriber, then you know that I am kind of cheap in certain areas. I'm luxurious in other areas, and with my health, that's one area that I really luxuriate in. I spend extra money because long-term how I feel matters a lot more than in the moment how I look. So I learned to eat really nutrient-dense foods. I learned to eat treats really happily, as in without any guilt. I learned how to properly hydrate my body, and we use food-based supplements and vitamins and healthy eating habits to fix those nutritional deficiencies. The third area that we fixed was my stress. The normal American lives with so much stress. We have normalized it so much that if somebody says I'm not busy, which I say now, I'm not busy, people look at me like I have 3 heads. But once you start making healthy choices for yourself, there's this domino effect that happens, especially when you put some money into it. One domino falls and it becomes easier and easier to make healthy decisions for yourself. The average American works 40 hours a week for 40 years for a job that she doesn't like, for work that doesn't matter. And that is stressful. So we made some huge changes, and one of those was me starting a YouTube channel, because this is work that I really love to do. It's not stressful for me. It allows me to grow, and hopefully my income grows with it. But today I live radically stressless compared to the normal American. I have a simple life. I'm home-based. I try to keep my responsibilities, just a few responsibilities. I have just a few friends, no social media, and I'm happy every day. If you live a stressful lifestyle and there's any way that you can reduce it, I mean, I think we all have those decisions to make, but it's so worth it. Your health is so dependent on your stress levels. And the fourth thing that we fixed, I'm going to call it spiritual practices. So I continued to work on my body health for 2 years, and I wasn't sure if I was doing enough, but I had to trust that I was doing my best, and as long as I stayed present, then I would sense if I needed to be doing something differently. And that's where spiritual practices are vitally important. Think about a tough decision that you faced recently, whether that's moving to a new city, taking a new job, dating or marrying someone, enforcing stronger boundaries in a relationship. These are tough decisions. But oftentimes we have this inner sense of knowing what we should do. And in fact, when we don't do it, afterwards we can think, I knew what I was supposed to do and I didn't do it. Some of my spiritual practices include prayer, meditation, yoga, going for walks on the beach. These help me to still my mind and all of those meandering thoughts in my head so that I can sense God's presence working through me. Some people call this intuition. I use the word intuition a lot, but it's a sense of knowing the way you should go. In the past few years, I've focused a lot on getting really grounded on what I believe is true about me, what I think God wants to see happen in my life, and releasing the control that I don't possess anyways to force that to happen. And living in this more relaxed, open-hearted state of flow has allowed me to feel the support that was always there for me. And that has been profoundly life-giving. Since I started this journey with the ups and downs over the last 2 years, I've felt the support of God, of my family, my few friends, my husband, and I wouldn't have that if I wasn't slowing down and feeling that inner peace. While the physical solutions for infertility have been vital to me getting pregnant, the spiritual practices are what allowed me to enjoy the last couple of years and to feel peace about taking the longer holistic path. And I can only imagine how being spiritually aligned will benefit my relationship with this baby. Which, speaking of, and finally, exactly 2 years into radically changing my life, I'm pregnant. I got pregnant early this year, and when I went in for my first ultrasound, I think it was around week 8, I was anxious sweating because, as you know, that first ultrasound experience with the first pregnancy was scarring. And so going in for my first ultrasound with this pregnancy, I was scared. Like, it's weird because I knew that this was going to be okay. I knew I was healthy to support a pregnancy and that this was just right this time. I could just feel it was right. And yet at the same time, the thoughts of miscarriage were triggered in my head and I was anxious. But when I've heard the heartbeat for the first time, it was indescribably beautiful. It was the most beautiful sound I've ever heard in my entire life. I immediately started crying. My emotions have really been a roller coaster this year, but I've done the best I can do. I've accepted it as a challenge to stay grounded in my spiritual truth. It's not the absence of challenge that makes you capable, it's how you handle it. And I have confronted those fears, I've accepted them, and I'm continuing my spiritual practice of believing that everything is working out for me the way that it's supposed to. But this time being pregnant has been so different than the first time. I mean, spiritually, I just feel good. I feel right. This is the right timing for this to happen. But physically, I'm hormonally balanced, I'm nutritionally optimized, I'm not stressed. My marriage is doing really well, especially after these last 2 years of this journey together, and my body is responding well this time. I hope this video has encouraged you. Whether you're in a season of having children or hoping for anything that just seems too far delayed. I hope I've shared some encouragement and maybe sparked some ideas that help you in your life. And if you have that inner knowing that you need to do something differently, please start that journey because it's so worth it. If you enjoyed this video, let me know by hitting that like button and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in more pregnancy videos. I'm planning on doing a recap of my first trimester, a week-by-week detail of symptoms, the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm planning on releasing that next week. So subscribe to my channel if you want to see that. I'll see you soon, but until then, take care.